Hello, YALSA land. I am Shannon Peterson, and I am co-editor of a new book, a new YALSA publication called Putting Teens First, along with Linda Braun.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Sorry, I was not ready. Hi.
Sorry, I didn't warn you for that. And we are interviewing people about once a month about awesome work that kind of showcases how librarians around the country are putting teens first in their library services, and how they've taken kind of big picture concepts from the Futures Report, YALSA's Futures Report, and taken action on that. So this month we are talking to Cheryl. Cheryl, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name.
Eberly.
Eberly. I
Yes.
did know it. It was in there. So we're talking to Cheryl Eberly about some great college and career readiness work that she is doing in sunny California. So Cheryl, would you mind introducing yourself and talk a little bit about where you work?
My name is Cheryl Eberly. I'm a young adult and volunteer principal librarian over here at the Santa Ana Public Library in Orange County, California. The city of Santa Ana is about 80% Latino families. It's a considered a small urban community, and there are a lot of challenges that youth in our city face. And the library plays a very, very important part in the role in the city to connect youth and connect family to important resources and computers and knowledge and information. And so a lot of my work with young adults involves heavy mentoring sort of aspect. We work on a umbrella term or an umbrella approach called our circle of mentoring. And that's where youth are provided, the library is a safe space for them, a third space for them. They're provided mentors from the community or other youth themselves who have grown up and who are now, wanting to serve back. And also the teens themselves have a request upon themselves to be mentors themselves to the next generation and to help the next generation come up. I've been doing this for, 2005. Oh gosh, I don't even know. I've been doing this for 12 years now, and I've seen the generations kind of grow up, and the youngest little buddy generations are now the new teens that are mentoring the next generation up. So it's been a really neat experience watching it. And a large part of my program and the Circle of Mentoring program and the Teen Space program at the library is centered around creating internships for youth, paid internships for youth. And much of my time is spent looking at grants and, working with the city to develop these kinds of paid internship experience programs for youth. So,
I love that, this sort of full circle aspect of your work and having teens that sort of graduate, become peer mentors. That's such a, I think, an important part of building youth capacity and then helping it continue. That's really awesome. Can you talk about like how you got this started? Like, how did you see that need in your community and then kind of you've built quite a framework. How did you get that going in the first place, and how did you identify the need?
When I first started as a librarian, or a library professional in the city of Santa Ana, I came in as a history room librarian, as an archivist, a community historian librarian. My background is in community history, and Santa Ana had a job opening in their history room, and at that time they had just gotten an LSTA, which is a California LSTA grant, to digitize over 2,000 of their historical photos. I did not want anything to do with teens at that time, and this is 2001. So teens were the furthest from my mind. I mean, I was teaching college, so it's a different type of young adult population that I was working with. They were older, and I wanted to be a historian and a community historian. And so I was in the archives, just very nice, comfortable place. And then we got this 2,000, we got to digitize 2,000 images, and we've got 1 year to do it. And so that's when I started relying on volunteers. And we had these teen volunteers that came into the history room. And that's how I started working with teens. And they just came into the history room, and it was early digitization technology, so it took a long time for one photo to be digitized at a time. So rather than sitting there silently, I'd always have music, and teens would be like, "Wow, you listen to that?" Yes, I listen to music. Yes, I like metal, and I like alternative. And it's like, oh my gosh, a librarian listens to this. You listen to Slipknot? Yes, I do. It's not a new thing. It existed before you.
You realized each other were humans.
Yes. But I think it was surprising for them that it's being played in the history room, And we just started, talking about their lives, and they would ask me questions, and I'd answer it, and I talked to them about, school and what they wanted to do. I was a first generation immigrant myself, and I was a first generation going to college. So, there's a lot of things that as a teen, you kind of have to go based on your knowledge, and you have to have some kind of confidence, but a lot of times you need an adult to sort of verify your experience and also kind of help pave the way, or kind of help you along a little bit to understand these things. So then, I had a couple of teens, and then they brought in their friends. And next thing I know, we've got like 5 or 6 teens hanging out in the history room, doing archival stuff, but also talking about life. I also did a big no-no at the time in the history room because the kids were really hungry a lot. So I just started bringing candy and beef jerky.
I love beef jerky.
I know, so do kids.
Candy and beef jerky.
I know.
I should have been there.
So I was a horrible archivist in terms of, preserving not having food in the history room. But I had kids who were, who'd get hungry and needed sugar. And so they would come in, and then next thing I know, my boss at the time was like, "Hey, Cheryl, do you want to, start being in charge of the teen volunteers?" So then I started being involved in being responsible for the volunteers, mainly because the history room just had a lot of work that needed volunteers. We had a lot of preservation work that we needed to do, we had, about like several thousand newspaper articles that needed to be copied onto archival paper. So there was a lot of work to do in the history room. So work and talk. And next thing I know, we've got teen volunteers. I'm working with them. I'm working with teens who are on probation that needed to do community service. So that's a different population, but we just kind of talked about stuff and about life, and one thing led to another, and the boss at the time, the person who was in charge of the young adults, left the library, and the teens were hanging out in the history room, and so they said, "Why don't you try and, get a hand at young adults?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" So I was technically still the archivist, the local history librarian, but I took on the young adult responsibility. And my first meeting I had with our teen club, and there was about 6 kids. And these were kids that had already been in the teen club, about 3 or 4 of them, and then the other ones that had been coming and hanging out into the history room that didn't see themselves as library kids, but somehow or other ended up that way. And I didn't know, I was not trained as young adult. I had not, like I said, I'm a horrible example of like formal training young adult librarian, because I did not take any YA classes in library school. I took government docs, I took collection management, I took local, preservation. That was my kind of, what I did. So I asked the kids, look, I was honest with them. I said, this is not my area, so I want to know what you guys want, what you want to achieve, as a teen club, what you want to achieve as young adults? And they said, we want to learn stuff and we want to do stuff. And I'm like, okay, what kind of stuff do you want to do? We want to do stuff for ourselves, but we want to do stuff for our community too. And that's how Circle of Mentoring came about. We didn't have a budget really for staff, for instructors to come in and teach them stuff. So that first year, I just emailed all my other coworkers and said, hey, I got a bunch of teens that want to learn stuff. Do you have any talents you would like to share with them so we can do little workshops? And I had, the bosses were pretty supportive of, letting staff have time to share their talents. And I had staff step up. A lot of the staff were circulation staff, were pages, were clerical staff, and they stepped up and they said, oh, I can do cooking. I can teach them how to bake. And we had a kitchen, so we had baking classes. And then my boss said, I know how to do gardening. I can lead them in the gardening program, and someone else did photography. So that's how the teen program started. And the teens themselves, the do stuff, the big thing that we did was our haunted house. So they just loved that, and that got a lot of community people coming in. But then they also wanted to, participate in the community. So every time there was some sort of, the first big event we did was this, the Orange County Black History and Multicultural Parade and Fair. They needed help from youth, so our youth went there and we manned sort of the kids zone there, and the kids and the teens had a good time. Then they did a project where the community, it was called Paint Your Heart Out, and we went out and we painted someone's house. We did a horrible job. And and they had a lot of fun. And then I had to kind of call in, my friends at the time after the teens left and come back and actually do a better job. So a lot. I know. So a lot of our work was not just staying in the library, but getting out in the community and doing stuff in the community.
For the community.
Sure. For the community.
Yeah. And one of the things that really struck me as you were just giving the overview and for the community, but the first step, it seems to me, was that you were able to build relationships with those kids, right? So I'm wondering if what you would say to other library staff who want to build those kinds of relationships, because it's not just about have them come to a program, but you had these conversations. So do you have any thoughts about what you might say to other library staff who want to focus on that relationship building piece?
It's just be approachable and ask the teen questions, go up to them, it's about being approachable, and it's about being welcoming and accepting of them. You're going to have teens that are going to, just not feel uncomfortable or come to the library as a safe space or and your job is to just, go and, talk to them and ask them how they're doing and what brought them there. And it's kind of just being open. And sometimes it's kind of just being there and watching. Teens are super sensitive. If you're having a bad day, kind of be careful, It's just, I guess, like I said, asking questions, asking them about themselves, asking them about what their goals are, what they like, what they don't like. Ask them, if they could do something for their community, what would they want to do, programs where you guys can come together. And the best parts were the ones where we worked, the things that build us up were the ones where we came together and did stuff for our community, or we came together and, mentored little kids in buddies, or worked on a haunted house project. So I think if you can do a project together, and you don't really need to be friends with every teen, you do need to do that, but if you want something high impact, if you have one or two teens that you can connect with, you build and work with them, and the other ones that will go out and bring other teens. And I mean, my favorite moments in the library is when I have a shy teen come in and we talk to them, and then, a few weeks later I see that teen, kind of being welcoming to another young adult in the space, and they are building a relationship with this person, this new kid, because it's not really you're trying to create a community within your teen library program. So you don't have to be the main person that everybody revolves around. You work with a couple and you maintain a relationship with a few teens, and you empower them and you tell them, hey, you enjoy this place, you might have other friends, other people out there that might, feel the same way about the same space.
Mm-hmm.
So, in our library, we have teens from all, backgrounds and demographics. Most of them are suffer from poverty, and then we have homeless youth, but we also have youth that come in from private schools, and they all are very welcoming to each other. But that's, you have to set the stage for that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's great.
Absolutely. And, Cheryl, I think of back when I was doing frontline work with teens, like that was the magic, is kind of creating a community with people like who would never be connected, even at the same school, or, it was like a totally different scenario to allow teens to connect with people that they wouldn't otherwise. I love that about library.
Yeah. And like I said, for us, it's really important to work on creating internships or building internships into large-scale programs, because the kids need some jobs, especially in our neighborhood. Getting access to professional level experience or that early work experience is super important. So, you kind of have, as a young adult librarian, I think you have to have some skin in the game on that, not just relationships, but really you kind of have to look for the grants. You have to look for the programming or the resources to bring to your youth. And if they see that, you have put yourself in there and you're kind of going out of your way to really kind of bring them opportunities, it impacts them tremendously.
Absolutely. And Cheryl, how have you been able to sort of get engagement and buy-in from your administrative staff to be able to support internships?
Well, for me, the circulation staff has always been my most amazing source of support, because a lot of the youth that come in, they come in as, in their internship, I hire them as pages. So part of their job would be helping the circulation with paging the books, because it's a simple task but needs to be done quite a bit. And then the other part of the time, they work, these youth page interns work with me on other big projects, other, like digital media or social innovation or, computing sort of projects. But they all come in as pages. And the circulation staff, the circulation department, I don't know in other libraries if it's true, but they tend to get a lot of the younger kids that come in. So they know they're very skilled at working with young people who come in to the library. Also in our library, 3 out of the 4, I'm the 4th principal librarian, started out, 2 started out as pages and 1 started out as a learning center tutor. So, our library does support that. So for me, it's always been, I get the support of my circulation staff, and that really helps nurture the young people and support them. As far as other staff, you got to focus on the good. People are always going to try and focus on the negative and the naysayers. And in the beginning, I used to have tons of naysayers, and I just kind of work with the youth I have and have the youth be helpful and help the youth, kind of continue doing good work and working on themselves. And eventually the naysayers kind of get drowned out and people start supporting our young people.
It's totally been true for us too. I think once folks like see the impact that these kinds of programs have, it's like, of course we're doing that. And I mean, I just love like how, I mean, you said at one point how it's not all about you and creating that community with teens. Like you so clearly make it not all about you as teen or youth services librarian in supporting the teen, like either having staff come in for workshops or, you know, supervising in the circulation department. Like it's really all hands are on deck to kind of nurture.
Exactly. Exactly. And because I do the volunteers, I can assign teens to all the different departments. So, and it, you know, and you get the right teen with the right department, and there you go. You have your natural, you know, I have like sometimes some of my most grumpiest staff grumpiest coworkers who do not want to work with teens, but then I have a really equally grumpy teen who's like just, and you put them together and it's like a match made in heaven, you know? And, you know, it's a little bit of social engineering. People want to teach other people things, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And they kind of work together. So over the years, you know, and like I said, the teens have, you have to learn different things, but they have watched over the time these young teens grow up to like these, you know, amazing adults who do stuff in the community. So, you know, my first batch of teens, you know, those 5 and those 3, they're already in their 30s and they still come back and they're library advocates in the community, you know, and several of them are now, you know, finished, are librarians, you know, are in library school. And like I said, a lot of them are out in the community or in other places, but they still, you know, kind of support they'll support the library and they advocate for libraries. So you really have to think about not just working with the teens as they are as teens. You have to see them 10 years from now, who they're going to be and how you're going to support them, because I'm always future thinking. And one of the first activities that we did with the teens, that I did with the teens, is to imagine a teen space. You know, imagine if you could have a space just for teens, what it would look like. And we didn't have the budget or the funding, but I had them think about it, imagine it. And you know, and so whenever we did projects or things for the community, like, you know, someday we might be able to have a space. And then, you know, from the first group in 2005, by 2009, someone passed away who had been a library page and worked at the library. She passed away and she left the library, her estate. And because of all the work of the teens and just the rising number of teens, the director at the time decided, okay, let's give them a teen space. Let's put it in the basement, you know, and part of the main thing about the teen space is that we allow food, and the food is done as a snack sale by our teen entrepreneurs who do our junior teen club. And so our teen volunteers sell snacks, they make the money goes back into teen programming for, you know, for scholarships and stuff like that. And that first generation who actually had grown up and weren't able to see the teen space, they come back, they're like, oh my God, this is what we talked about. This is what we wanted, you know? So they still have kind of like ownership, or they tell you guys are so lucky, you know, we just wandered around getting kicked out from every different space in the library. We were a roving band. We tried to go, at first we were meeting in the children's area in the castle, and then they got too rowdy there. I mean, we had I'd just say there was a birthday cake fight that happened in the children's castle, and we were banned from there. So then we moved to a meeting room with a more formal atmosphere, because they couldn't meet in the history room anymore because, you know, the regular history patrons were kind of complaining. So we moved around a bit until we got our teen space. But, you know, they need to take, you need to have them thinking about their future, not just what, you know, they can do for you in the library, but what, you know, you can do for them and how you can get them to that future. You know what I mean? And a lot of young kids are, especially from our neighborhood, from like Santa Ana or tough communities, it's difficult for them to even hope or even imagine something 10 years or imagine themselves being successful and believing it. And I think if you can ground them in a place like a library that's been there like our library's been there since 1960s, they can like, okay, 10 years from now, what do you want to see here? It really kind of connects them. You know what I mean?
So Cheryl, I think the themes I'm hearing are teen relationships, future, community engagement, and staff support, right? Would you say those are, and then seeking out opportunities through funds and things like that? Those are like the 5 key elements of what you're doing.
And I wouldn't say staff support, I would say staff connection.
Staff connection, good. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, because it's connection, I think, you need connection first before you can get support. Mm-hmm. And sometimes connection comes before staff even realizes that they're supporting them.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it.
And Cheryl,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Shannon.
I was just going to say, I think what I'm so taken with in talking with you about this, and, I know we were able to talk before, is the way you talk about this work is you're focused on digging deep in supporting teens with what they want to do. Like, that's your core. And I think when we talk about teen services, it can be really easy to be like, oh, this program, or like I'm doing this initiative, or we did the haunted house, and kind of talk about that. But you're talking about like the meat of what you're trying to accomplish with these kids, and that's spreading in a million different ways, whether it's programmatic or interns or whatever. But it's like, it's all about how you're helping put teens first and help them imagine that future. And I love that.
Well, thank you. That's the only way I think to be successful. I measure success by impact, and I've been very fortunate that I have supervisors that don't force me to play the numbers game, that they understand that if you impact 2 or 3 kids, it has like a force multiplier effect. So I've been very fortunate, and I always feel, and it's something I kind of have to remember, and it's something I think a lot of young adult librarians have to kind of remember, is like, don't focus on the negative, focus on the kid that's right in front of you, that, is looking for a connection with you, not on the ones that you can't reach or doesn't want that, or that you have to work double for, and on the staff that care and want to support you or want to connect with you or your program. Focus on that, because you're always going to have naysayers. You're always going to have people that are going to hate you, don't like you. I mean, until today, I still have people that are like, going to be negative, but you just got to have, I guess, unbridled positive enthusiasm.
Unbridled. Well, and I think if you're aiming for impact, it's all about perseverance, with anything.
Yeah, it is. Like I told Linda before, you got to have a 10-year plan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
you got to see yourself 10 years in the future, man.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, but I think that's a really good way to look at it. And I think that's obvious. Well, now you're into your 12th year, so but so I know you're going to keep moving forward, but you're just such a great example. And I'm thinking about the chapters in the book Shannon and I edited, and you actually are sort of a role model for all of those chapters, because we had youth voice, which you definitely have, community engagement, which you definitely have, outcomes, which is there, continuous learning. I feel like even if you're not doing formal learning, Cheryl, you're really always learning in some way or another and trying things out.
Yeah.
That's such a important piece. So go ahead.
I think something I always like to tell people, or librarians in the field, is like, you have to understand, it's library science, so you're going to learn from your failures more so than you're going to learn from your successes.
Exactly.
So you have to take a little bit of risk in some programs that are worth it. And if it fails spectacularly, then you reassess what worked, what didn't work, and you go to the next one. And that's something that I really try to teach my youth a lot, is to not be afraid of failing, because you have to try. You have to try, and you have to learn from it, and that's how you grow.
Exactly. I think that's a fantastic way to close out our interview. You have to try. You have to be ready to fail. And so, Cheryl, thank you so much for talking with every time I talk to you, even if I'm hearing something I've heard before, I'm so inspired by the work you're doing. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I work with inspiring people, so I'm happy about that.
That's great. So thank you. And Shannon, any last words from you?
I just absolutely echo the inspiration and thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you so much. Glad to talk to you guys.